What is the equality effect? When countries prioritise equality, it has a magical effect. The elite, when too powerful, have wasted many things in their quest for ever greater supremacy, from precious planetary resources to the lives of those they coerce. Evidence of their waste abounds. It has led them to dominate recorded history, especially ancient history. Pyramids, carved laboriously in stone, immortalised African pharaohs as the first named tyrants of the world, while their less celebrated and more egalitarian contemporaries in the Indus Valley civilization only made it into a very few of our history books. Their ruins were discovered by railroad developers and revealed that they'd built a vast, well-organised settlement with drainage and sanitation and even large communal swimming baths, all centuries before the Roman Empire came into existence. This focus on the waste of the many, not the few, was ahead of its time. As a species, we now have more cubic metres of sewers and storm drains than all of our majestic buildings put together. In Britain, the introduction of widespread sanitation a century ago was followed by decades of steadily increasing equality, which saw child mortality and the spread of disease in all social classes plummet. When policy benefits the whole of society, I call it the equality effect, and it goes way beyond good sanitation. Countries which prioritise equality tend to have happier, healthier populations. Their infant mortality rates decreasing faster and their life expectancy rises high. People in more equitable countries tend to eat less meat, use less water, produce less waste, and are more likely to walk or cycle to work. More equitable countries tend to be smarter too. Tests comparing OECD countries in the maths, literacy and problem-solving skills of their young adults showed higher scores in the most equal of countries as compared to their less equal counterparts. Social mobility is also higher in those countries, and people tend to have fewer children than they have in more unequal rich countries. By focusing also on reducing homelessness and poverty, these more equitable countries experience lower levels of violence and crime. The good news is that according to recent statistics from the OECD, collected up until just before the pandemic began, the gap between rich and poor has been falling in most affluent countries. The motivation of those who have helped to achieve this isn't just the global gains that reducing inequality has to offer, but also a desire to avoid the problems faced by the most unequal of wealthy countries who have lost control of their rich. They look to countries like the US and Britain, where rising inequality is linked to a rise in far-right voting and populism, where the rich either pay less tax or are allowed to avoid taxes altogether by a system which wouldn't be hard to fix, where the lack of regulation in the housing market has seen increasing levels of homelessness, while thousands of investment properties often remain empty, and where child poverty is high and more often on the rise. People in the most unequal affluent countries aren't just desensitised to the homelessness and destitution around them, but are understandably much more afraid of losing what they have. The wealthier the rich are allowed to become, the more afraid they also are of falling into that ever-widening gap. From heights, they can easily buy their way out of regulations and out of the fines set up to protect the poor and the environment. But this can change. Just as increasing inequality has become normal in today's Britain, it's worth remembering that we saw a long period of the opposite trend. Don't stand back. Take part. Greater equality is realised through believing it is not only desirable but possible, and by refusing to accept anything that takes us further away from that goal.